Thank you for joining us again today for what is our penultimate fundraising during uncertain times webinar. I'm Austin Detweiler, the managing editor of Philanthropy Daily. Thank you again for being with us. This is our sixth webinar, so we've already covered major gifts, direct mail, fundraising events, foundations, and strategic planning. There's a lot of really useful content available at philanthropydaily.com if you're wondering about managing any of those areas of your fundraising operations. As you know, we've been focused on how to fundraise in the midst of pandemic, but here's the heart of our advice. The fundamentals are the same. You need to be smart and strategic, like always, but human nature hasn't changed, and the fundamentals of good fundraising have not changed. So wherever the pandemic and the economy go in the next few weeks, the advice in our webinars and all the COVID-related articles, they'll still be really valuable to you. Of course, if you still have questions about topics we haven't covered, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you, and we'll get someone on it who can help you out. Today, to that end, we're here to discuss social media and digital marketing. Unfortunately, most nonprofits are woefully underinvested in this area, and that's usually because of one of two things. Either they don't know what to do with digital marketing, or they just don't see the value in it, right? So most of the money comes in the mail or in personal meetings. The internet's filled with too much noise. Good fundraising depends upon, real personal relationships and so on. Yet none of these reasons are good reasons not to invest in digital marketing, and especially now. As I was just saying, even if the environment is new, the fundamentals are the same, and this new environment makes social media marketing more important because people are spending even more time there than they used to. So really, if you want to compete today, you have to meet people where they are, and they're online. As Eric Strife mentioned in his Philanthropy Daily article yesterday, even if you're not a social media user, the vast majority of people are, and you really do not want to get crowded out by ignoring that medium. As far as lacking the knowledge and the tools to enter the digital marketing arena, that's what Eric Strife and Kelly Deleon are here for today. Before I introduce them, I just want to remind everyone to send in your questions. Of course, you can use the Q&A tool or the chat box, which you can see right below my face. If you just scroll your mouse around, activate the screen. Eric and Kelly have some opening remarks, but after that, we'll have 30 to 35 minutes for an open Q&A. So please let us know what questions you have and send them anytime. Joining us today, then, we have Eric Strife and Kelly Deleon. If you were on our direct response webinar, you'll remember Eric from when he led that conversation. Eric heads up American Philanthropic's direct response group, and he has extensive experience in fundraising and marketing for both nonprofit and for-profit organizations. A key part of Eric's work now is helping American Philanthropic's clients grow in the digital space and build integrated multi-channel direct response efforts. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about that today. Prior to joining American Philanthropic, Eric had led marketing efforts for organizations as diverse as the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate, as well as Chase Bank, Porsche, and many others. Kelly Deleon is joining us today from her home in Illinois. Kelly currently works in the for-profit space doing B2B marketing, but before that, she spent a decade in nonprofit fundraising on both the client and the agency sides, serving a wide variety of organizations, including international relief groups, as well as arts, faith-based, and human service organizations. Kelly is now the Vice President of Marketing and Strategy for the MX Group. They're an integrated B2B marketing agency that helps clients attract, engage, and convert customers. So Kelly's knowledge and experience in digital marketing is extensive, and it will be extremely valuable for us today. Finally, as always, Justin Strife is joining us. Justin is a partner with American Philanthropic. He spent his career in fundraising, and now he helps clients across the country strengthen, grow, and professionalize their development operations. So Justin's here today to field questions as they come in if they're focused more on fundraising than marketing specifically. With that, I'm going to ask you to send in questions, and I will hand it over to Eric, and then Eric, you can pass it off to Kelly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Austin. I appreciate that. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Justin, for participating. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a great conversation. Looking forward to the questions and answer period. And I'm really looking forward to what Kelly has to share with us today, or her deep knowledge. So I just wanted to start with a few opening remarks to tee a couple things up for us. One, as Austin mentioned, we're discussing social media today. And I want to point out this, it's not, and we're not talking about it in light of as it being a direct fundraising platform per se, but a piece of the puzzle to fit into your organization's outreach efforts. And that's a very important concept. But there are three core principles we're going to talk about that Kelly is going to dig into a little bit more as well, but that relate to your social media and marketing efforts. And these are core concepts that you can build off now and in the future. But we think these are incredibly important, especially during these times, as Austin mentioned. Those three concepts are integrate, involve, and inspire. And I actually have a fourth. I like things in threes, but there's a fourth one as well. And kind of the idea of educate and entertain. And I've talked about that on prior webinars as well. And I'm going to talk about that briefly as well. So a couple quick thoughts on the first three, which again, Kelly's going to go much deeper in with much more meaningful thoughts than I probably have myself. But a few words on that. Integrate, just to tee it up for, it's a simple idea, but it's very hard to execute. And bottom line is, what we're trying to do is strive to provide a journey or an experience for our donors, for our supporters, that encompasses multiple channels in a cohesive way, all working together to promote your mission. It's not a one-channel world. It's people, and people expect that. They expect us to be in multiple channels. So you got to just remember, it's not a one-channel world, it's a multi-channel world. We need to integrate our message across those. Then integrate and then involve. Another simple concept, which say, oh yeah, we involve people, right? But we need to step back and figure out a way to engage people as individuals, not as donors, not as supporters, not as a major gift person, but it's individual people, just like you, like me, like our families, like our kids, like our parents, like people we know at work. They're all human beings. They're just like us. And the idea about involving is not just pushing content that is oftentimes either too organizationally focused or just too bland or just completely unmemorable. It's about involving them in a deeper way. And we're going to go into that. And then thirdly on that is the inspiring part. Another simple concept, right? To inspire. We can use that term and overuse it all we want. But at the end of the day, we need to think of ways we can actually do it to inspire people. Not just share content, quote unquote, but to involve them, inspire them in what we're doing, for them to go deeper and have a deeper understanding of our organization and instill something that inspires them to make a difference, to be nicer, to take some kind of a positive action in the world, to help others, to better themselves, to recognize the world around them in a different way. How do we uplift them versus just pushing out content? So we're going to talk about that. So these three concepts, in my opinion, are all embedded in lots of things that get talked about in marketing. There's nothing that really I find more uplifting than I've watched, I don't know how many times, Simon Sinek's video on what is your why. And I think those three concepts, something for you to go back to if you haven't watched. I imagine many of you have already watched that and seen it. It's one of the most watched TED Talks in history. But it outlines that idea that people won't truly engage with you, whether you're a nonprofit, a service, or a product, unless they understand and align the why you do what you do. Not the what or how you do it, but the why you do it. And that kind of gets back to the inspiring and the involving and integrating. Fourthly, I'm just going to spend a couple minutes on educating and entertaining. I've touched on that on the webinar and I think in one of the articles. And we talk about educating, and when we talk about it, educating and entertaining, it's important to keep in mind that we should stay focused on our core mission, right? So if we can't go too far off a field, but there are ways to educate and entertain. And social media platforms are, the way to do it, are a great way to involve and inspire your constituents in this way. So, and you take a step back, we need to be a resource, a place of peace, a place of hope, a place of certainty in this uncertain world. And we can provide that. If we can provide that, we'll capture the hearts and minds of our constituents. On the flip side, just imagine an organization that does not provide some level of hope, some level of peace, or some level of certainty, right? You don't want that to be your organization. We want to be an organization that's providing that hope to the world. And we can do that through educating and entertaining. Educating means providing information, right? It's not just educating in the sense of like going to university or getting a degree, right? It means informing, sharing ideas, getting people involved in what we're about, and so forth, and to share how you're impacting the world in a positive way. But the most important, we're always educating our constituents, but how can we laser focus is to reinforce our mission, to affirm and reaffirm a donor's support of our organization, and to promote their sense of identity and belonging with us. And just two examples on here. I think we all know the organization Feeding America. I think they're just doing an amazing job of amplifying their mission across social media channels with imagery and stories that not only discuss the COVID-19, but are making an impact. They're really telling their story, I think, in a very compelling way. It's worth looking at and seeing how they're integrating that across their channels. So they're letting their people know about their needs and services, and that they're increasing, not decreasing, but they are educating us about what they're doing, which I think is amazing. Charity Water, even in a little deeper, more profound way, if you're familiar with Charity Water, which I imagine many of you are, had a live conversation the other day between Scott Harrison, their CEO, and Simon Sinek, who I just mentioned a bit before. It was very engaging. You saw it, it's all in alignment with both their personalities, but particularly with Charity Water and the mission of Scott, who he's bigger than life, his history and who he is. But the mission of providing benefit to the people was there, a sense of context, hope, optimism during this pandemic. Just hearing these two talk was really affirming and reassuring. They're two great empathetic leaders sharing their heart and treating individuals as human beings, just like you and me, and letting their hair down. Watch it if you can find it. It's probably at the Charity Water website or Simon Sinek's. I'm sure you could Google it. But again, educating, sharing ideas, involving, inspiring, beautiful. Then lastly, entertaining is conceptually good, but we're not in the entertainment industry. Of course we're not, right? Most nonprofits aren't, unless we're a theater or something along those lines, or the symphony or something like that. But take a step back and see how we can educate and entertain and still be true to our mission. So think of Shed Aquarium. I mentioned that in the past too with the penguins. This thing never gets old. They're still doing it. This is going to age incredibly well for them. People are going to remember this forever. If you've watched the video, watch the little penguins walking around in an empty museum, an empty aquarium. The imagery and the feelings and emotions that are communicated through these penguins walking around, the fun, the happiness, the sense of wonder and hope and optimism, is amazing. But perhaps more importantly, you realize that Shed Aquarium is a place that cares about wildlife, true to their mission, and is a fun and forward-thinking organization, and ultimately is a place I want to visit when I can. Next time I'm in Chicago, if things are open, I'm going to go to Shed Aquarium. I mean, you're never going to forget, right? Another one I'd like to call out on that as an idea is equine advocates, Sanctuary for Horses here on the East Coast. They've really leaned into the idea of promoting their mission and staying in front of the constituents, where they're basically shut down. They can't have volunteers, they can't have people come visit, but they still have to serve their horses. And they've come up with some really great tactics to educate and entertain in their kids' corner with videos and coloring books, quizzes that they've offered, even some kind of an equine arithmetic section, which I don't know what that is, but some kind of equine arithmetic project for kids. And a puzzle, a daily puzzle where they have an interactive puzzle. They publish a puzzle piece every day, and you kind of go in and you place your puzzle around, and it's a picture of a horse, I'm sure. I haven't put my puzzle together yet, but you get a puzzle every day. So they're keeping people involved and engaged, just like Shed is doing, planting a seed for the future of, I have to go to the sanctuary once I can get out of the house. So those are the four things. Integrate, involve, inspire, and then of course, educating and entertaining. Those are my thoughts on that. I would like to hand it over to Kelly for her thoughts as well. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Eric. I am so excited to be with everyone today. As Austin mentioned, kind of as he was introducing me, I am in for-profit marketing now, but I have spent a lot of time on the nonprofit side as well. And actually, there's a lot more in common than different than you would think. And I really have spent a lot of time over the last recent years focused on digital marketing. And I think it can be so powerful for nonprofits. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that today. As Eric said, kind of with those 3 I's: integrate, involve, and inspire. And the first one that Eric alluded to was this idea of the importance of integration and the fact that we live in a multi-channel world. Here's the thing, your donors are also consumers and parents and all of these different things, and we live in that multi-channel world. It's not one person who reads your direct mail and a different person who goes to your website. We're used to kind of organically going about our day and seeing these messages on, whether it's for nonprofits or for-profit brands, but, seeing them on TV and websites and in direct mail and in a catalog and on a billboard and hearing a friend talk about it. And so the reality is it is a connected world. And the more you can lean into that and make sure that you're being strategic about crafting that cohesive experience for people, the more it's going to be that kind of rising tide lifts all boats type of situation. So not every channel is going to be, maybe specifically tied to fundraising where you can really tie an ROI, but all of them are going to be about that idea of really engaging with the donor in all of the places that they're at. And of course, one big piece of that is digital. And in particular, I know we're really focusing a lot on social media. And the fact of the matter is digital behaviors have continued to increase over the years. But right now, in the situation that we're in, all digital behaviors are just going through the roof. And in particular, social media engagement and social media time spent. So it's really a point of opportunity. I know as nonprofits, we oftentimes think about, when we're talking about direct mail, we talk about kind of standing out in a crowded mailbox and how you're going to stand out. I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. There are plenty of companies, for-profit, nonprofit, whatever, that are really not getting social media right, or maybe not even doing social media at all. So this is a huge opportunity for organizations to be in the place where people are and be engaging and really be having a way of kind of differentiating your organization and being in a place where others aren't. So I just want to encourage you to go for it and to be innovative and use this time as an opportunity. And I'll say, kind of, you can probably maybe sit there listening and think, well, easy for her to say, nonprofits have, so much else that they're working through and so much else on our plates and we're strapped for time. And, so how do we balance that? And I will say social media is definitely kind of this beast that you feel like you have to feed all the time, but it is doable. Even though I said I, kind of work with B2B companies right now, to be honest, I run the marketing department for our company. I'm used to having 3 or 4 people on my team, and we have to do all the things. That's the website and the events and the follow-up and the social media. So I get what it's like to be strapped, but this is a time to just go for it. And I want to encourage you to do that. And I think, really when I think about that integrate time or the integrate concept, it's about the idea that this is multi-channel and it's about engaging with donors in a personal way, viewing them through a personal lens, not as a big mass of people that are kind of all one, but thinking about particularly in digital, where you can have more of these kind of one-to-one or tailored or segmented experiences that really are focused on engaging with people where they're at, whether it's why they choose to engage with your organization, or maybe the recency of their last gift, or those kinds of things. You can really find ways to tailor how you work with people. And then kind of one last nugget that I'll leave on the integrate piece, particularly related to social media, is it's such a cheap place to learn. I know on my nonprofit side, you're oftentimes going back and forth on creative. What should the teaser on the envelope be? Or I don't know, should we have this line or this line on the, on the response slip or whatever? You can test some of those messages and even images and those kinds of things in social media, and then use what you learn in terms of which things that people click on, which things that people engage with, and then pull that into your direct mail. And then you can make sure that you're having that kind of cohesive image. But just an idea there to kind of think about another way to leverage that integrate idea. So the next one that I want to talk about is involve, as Eric mentioned, and particularly where nonprofits are involved. What we're trying to ask donors to do is to give us something, whether it's their time as volunteers or it's their financial gifts. And in terms of tangible things, they don't get anything else in return. So the way that we have to work with them is by involving them and getting them fired up and excited about what we do, and have them kind of understand the role that they play. And this is where involve becomes so important. And the fact of the matter is, social media is social. It's about relationships. And so it can't just be all about ask, 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 or thinking that everything is going to be leading to a gift, but rather it's kind of thinking about this as a relationship. Think of it as a friendship, or how you want to engage with people. And so I do want to encourage you to kind of shift your thinking a little bit about what you would expect to get out of social media and what you would expect to get out of this involvement. You're not necessarily going to draw a straight line from this post to how much it raised, or this post to exactly how many gifts you got. And you may not be able to have kind of that straight return on investment that you would see. So I want to encourage you to kind of level set with yourself and with your organization as a whole about what people should expect from your efforts on social media, and kind of reset those KPIs, those key performance indicators. What are the things that you're going to measure to kind of know if this is working or not? And it's probably less about gifts and more about things like, are you growing an audience? Are you getting more followers? Are people engaging with what you're sharing by clicking through, by sharing it with someone, by commenting on it? And even though you can say, well, yeah, but at the end of the day, I have numbers that I need to hit to serve our mission. I have to be about fundraising. I totally get it. But all of this is about kind of leveling up that engagement. It reminds me a lot of when I was working on the nonprofit side. One of the things that we were always balancing was the idea between, direct mail and digital. And in particular, in the 2000s, even kind of for profit companies, there was this influx of e-commerce. And so everyone stopped mailing catalogs. Eddie Bauer and JCPenney and whatever, they stopped mailing catalogs because everyone was going to go shop online and it was just going to be magical. Well, what people found out was it actually took a multi-channel world. Even though people might have been completing their purchase online, the catalog showing up in someone's mailbox is what drove them to remember that they wanted to go to eddiebauer.com or whatever to buy their sweater. And so I think you have to think about, if you had been looking at the ROI of that catalog and seeing how many people had filled out that form and remailed it back in, you would have said, stop mailing catalogs. We have to stop wasting money on print. No one's responding to the catalog. I think you have to think about social media the same way. You might not see that exact direct line to a donation, but you have to know that that's creating that overall sense of engagement. So you have to think about frequency, staying in front of people, keeping them engaged, keeping them involved, and then having those content points that really allow you to create that real relationship that you have such an opportunity with social media for. So it's thinking through the content that is valuable to your donor. It's not all talking about you. It's not, all about our organization, but rather, what is it about them to involve them, to inspire them, to reaffirm why they chose to support your organization in the first place? Eric had mentioned that Simon Sinek talk about finding your why, and I think that's really valuable even when we think about our organizations and what their why is. But I actually think social media is a good opportunity for you to find out what is your donor's why, right? It's oftentimes we can't have one-to-one conversations with all of our donors, and sometimes it's we send the direct mail out and we get the response back, or we may have an event and there's a big group of people there and we can engage with them somewhat but not completely. What if you just put out some stuff on social media to ask people, what is your why? I've seen this a lot recently, you know, people posting about, I stay home for my kids. I stay home for the frontline healthcare workers. I stay home for. Well, what if for your organization, you ask people to say why they care about your organization, why your mission matters to them. Think about how that could create such a sense of community and engagement within your donors. And as like a little extra bonus piece on the side, you could be learning more about what it is that really gets people fired up about your mission. And you can then use that to go forward to think about how else you want to communicate with folks. So that's a little bit about involve, really thinking about the frequency of being timely in that relationship, and obviously bringing context and you know, relevant and valuable content to folks. And then I guess on my last point, I'll kind of get onto that inspire. And I started on that a little bit, but, you know, really, you know, when people give and support organizations, there's nothing tangible that they get back, but it really is more about their sense of identity and their sense of belonging and why they choose to participate with your mission and what that says about their values and themselves. So, you know, there's oftentimes this kind of talk about wanting to, you know, elevate yourself into people's minds and hearts as one of their kind of top 3 charities of choice, right? Well, again, remember how I said that the social media space is not as crowded. Think about the type of, you know, relationships and two-way street and communication and storytelling that you can do on social media to kind of raise your organization up in people's mind and have them be really engaged. That's the great thing there, you know, about social media. You can use so many things like video and different, you know, approaches to really engage people in your mission in a different way. I think of this inspire a lot. Like sometimes I think about major donors, and sometimes major donors get kind of a lens or a view into your organization that maybe not all of your donors get. If you are an international organization, maybe every once in a while, you might take a major donor trip where a bunch of folks might be able to go over and see some of your work out in the field. Or, you know, maybe you have an event where major donors are able to come and see kind of behind the scenes of how something works, but it's difficult maybe for you to give that perspective to all of your donors. Well, all of a sudden on social media, what if you use video to give some of that behind the scenes, to give some of that engagement? Those are the kinds of things that can really inspire and kind of light on fire the hearts of your donors and make them really excited. So a couple tips that I want to kind of leave you off with Inspire, and then we'll kind of transition into some of the Q&A, is just, you know, kind of some points that you want to think through. The first one is make sure that your messaging is consistent. Obviously, you can kind of go for a range of things on social media, but you want to make sure that everything still feels really on point with all of the other touch points that you might have with your donors. When it's consistent, it's that rising tide that lifts all ships. When it feels disconnected, it can kind of erode trust and make people kind of think, well, what are they really about? So make sure things are consistent. Make sure that your call to action is really clear. The social media space in particular is fast, it's fleeting, it can be crowded, it can be noisy. So if you're asking people to do something, whether that's truly asking for a gift, or you want them to read something, or you want them to share their point of view, make it really clear, really crisp. What do you want them to do? And ask them. And then the other thing that I would encourage you to do is, social media can feel overwhelming because there's so many channels and so many different things. Think about where your donors are. Who is that typical donor for you? Where are they most likely to engage? And focus your effort and energy there first and foremost. And then maybe you can kind of branch out over time. So if you're already focused on Facebook, maybe you take this as an opportunity to get into Twitter. LinkedIn might have felt like a thing that's too businessy and maybe not something that you would focus on, but maybe if you're an educational institution or a think tank or something like that, maybe that's where your people tend to hang more. And so you might think about kind of diversifying into those channels, but make sure that you're setting yourself up for success by thinking about the context there. And then kind of the last couple of little nuggets that I'll add is just make sure in this time right now, you're being timely and real. I have a friend who works for an organization that serves veterans after they've come back. And in particular, one of the things that they do for support is things like group therapy type of sessions that just allow people to kind of talk about their experience in trying to return. Those are things that used to happen in person. And now in the current situation that we're in, they've had to change that up, right? They're doing them as Zoom calls, kind of like we're on right now. And I want to just say, you know, they're really real about that in their fundraising and on their social media. They're acknowledging the way that this time is changing maybe how they carry out their mission. It's maybe changing or increasing their needs. So I want to recommend to you just to be timely and real and authentic. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is really that point about authenticity. I think the other thing that can feel really overwhelming about social media, again, it feels like you have to feed the beast and there's all this content and I'm supposed to do it daily and how am I going to do all of this if it has to be this beautiful, crystal clear, perfectly polished thing. Authenticity trumps production value every single time. You know, getting on a video with your phone right out in front of you and you know, giving a walk around to see how your mission is coming to life is going to be more valuable than a, you know, highly produced, super slick thing. So you want to make sure that you're on point, but you know, adjust your expectations a little bit for what things have to look like, and think more about the message that you're sending than the level of polish that's on there. So hopefully I haven't talked too long. Hopefully that started to give people some good ideas and good launch points, but I'm excited to hear all of your questions. And in particular, if you want to get into some more of the nuts and bolts of how to go about this, I'm happy to help.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks, Eric. That was really very good. We have way more questions that we can deal with, so we'll go as quickly as possible. The first thing I want to say, just echo something Kelly said about how we can't always draw a straight line from like this engagement to this dollar, something like that. But she mentioned, you know, the rising tide raises all boats. We want to oppose silo mentalities at organizations, both between programs and fundraising. We talk about that a lot, but also between different areas of fundraising, right? Like direct mail and major gifts help each other in the same way that digital marketing helps your direct mail and helps your major gifts fundraising and all of that. So it's an investment that might not have the clearest ROI, but is still worth doing because it conduces to an overly strong program overall. Also, there's a question about the TED Talk that Eric mentioned. Nicole shouted that out into the chat box, but for later, in Eric's article on Philanthropy Daily yesterday, he links to it in there. So you can dig it up right in there anytime you'd like. The first question I'm going to start with, if we're just getting started with social media engagement, are there any channels that you recommend starting with, or some best for donor engagement?
Oh, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can take that. The first thing I would say is there's not a one size fits all answer. And I don't mean to say that in a waffling kind of way, but it really is thinking about where your donors are. I think for a lot of nonprofits, Facebook is probably a pretty natural place to start, but I would spend some time really thinking about your audience and trying to understand where they engage. And maybe even if you're not sure, ask around, you know, maybe there's some of your folks that are on the phones with donors or might be answering questions, and kind of get like a feet on the street perspective, like, hey, where do you think our donors might be most likely to hang out? So I think it is about kind of figuring out where people are. Facebook is a natural one, but I kind of alluded to this a little bit. LinkedIn used to be all about business, all about networking. It's kind of changing a little bit more to feel more like Facebook, and people are sharing more content and engaging in a different way in LinkedIn. So depending on what your mission is, that might be where your audience is more likely to hang out, and there might be some appropriate ways for you to engage. So it's a little bit of a match of the channel with your audience.
30-second input on that. I think Facebook, by and large, as you said, would be the primary place I'd go to. But I think the key thing is to look at, as well as your audience, B, your objective. What are you trying to accomplish, right? So if it's truly maybe that kind of entertaining, educating in a fun way for a younger audience, Instagram might be the place to be. Facebook is going to offer much more robust opportunities for engagement as far as sharing, liking, running an ad, getting involvement going, linking them out to different things and so forth. So if your objective is maybe more putting people on like taking a survey, leading them to a landing page to take a survey so you can do email acquisition and then put them into a drip campaign journey of some sort to become a donor, Facebook is going to be much more effective than something like Instagram, because Instagram, it's just not as easy to do those links or do a call to action like come to this landing page, because there's no real click through on the posts themselves.
Great, thanks. our CEO is very sensitive to using the term COVID-19 in any of our messaging. I don't agree. Doesn't it make us look like we aren't in touch with reality if we're dancing around that?
Justin, you want to talk about that, or do you want me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, I think it would be tone deaf or insensitive to not talk about it. So I think I would agree with the question, the person asking the question. You've got to ask, you've got to bring it up. Do you dwell on it? Do you make it the whole purpose of everything? No, but it would be insensitive to not bring it up. Otherwise, you're just ignoring the biggest news story out there that will be the news story for months and months, probably, realistically. So you have to address it, but and acknowledge and wish that your followers and your donors are safe and healthy, but then you go into your message. But no, it would probably be tone deaf to not talk about it.
And I think just to add to that, I think the idea of that we've all been talking about, but Kelly brought up as well, is authenticity and being, you know, in tune with your people as human beings. Like, they're just like you and me. They're dealing with the same thing. They're all working at home. They're all trying to, you know, they're spraying down the mail when it comes in, maybe, or they're wiping down their packages, or they're wearing the mask, trying to figure out what mask to buy and where to get it. I mean, we're all dealing with it. And, you know, it's just a human thing going on right now. If you don't talk about it, be like, it's interesting. Like, if you didn't bring it up to a friend when you called them on the phone, like, hey, are you surviving? Like, it would be odd, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thanks. Here's a pretty tactical question. If we participate in Giving Tuesday now, how long can we spread out an email campaign for, and how often should we be sending emails to our supporters?
More than happy to go, but Kelly, do you want to take a shot?
Well, in terms of email, I just in general, I would say it's a line to walk as well, to make sure you don't feel like you're turning into spam. But I think oftentimes we might go too far of erring on the side of caution. Again, it's another place where this is where people are. They're checking their email every day. They maybe don't want to hear from you every day, but to think that you can only talk to them once a month or something, it actually makes you more likely to fall off of their radar. So again, I think it's about that relevance and value. You can't send an email every day that says, give us money, give us money, give us money. But if you're finding those ways, in the same ways that I mentioned about social media, about to deliver value, to inspire, to educate a little bit, to entertain, as Eric mentioned, all of those things that can deepen engagement, then those are the ways that I would say to continue to stay in front of people.
I would just echo that. Just have a deliberate program, whether you call it a 7-part series or a 6-part, whatever your campaign you build around Giving Tuesday. You start the day before, 2 days before, you do it some on that day and do some, whatever it might be, but build a campaign around that. Just don't send out the same thing every time. Do some forwards. Like if your CEO sent the email, have the board member or yourself if you're a development director, do a forward. Hey, I hope you saw this. Figure out a cadence there that is natural. But I can almost guarantee, well, put it this way, from my experience, the vast majority of nonprofits are not in any danger of over emailing. There are a few that do it too much, and that they're not sending the right information or the right tone or right messaging. But very few nonprofits are over emailing right now. And I think that Giving Tuesday, you've got to do it more, because you're going to get lost in the mailbox. Once you get down below the fold, just like being on Twitter, once you're below the fold, then no one's going to see it anyway. So yeah, think it through, like how you build that journey. Just build out a journey, build out a calendar of what you're going to say, what's your talking point, what's the message, what's our objective, what are we trying to achieve, and build that out over that 3 or 4 or 5 day period for Giving Tuesday.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm flying through these because we have a lot here, and we're doing great. Is hiring a marketing or social media consultant a wise move during this time? Is it okay to spend money on increasing social media presence during downtime, so we have a better launch pad when we're back up and running?
Yeah, sure. It's a great idea if you hire American Philanthropic. I mean, it's, there's no question about it. I'm joking. No, is it a good? I think honestly, I'm joking, but the idea here. Let's take a step back. This is the best time to do it. You know what? 6 months ago was the best time. This is even a better time right in the middle of the pandemic. Like, we're living in the midst of a digital transformation that we've never seen on the face of this earth. to get into it now is better than tomorrow. If you got into it 6 months ago, it would have been better than today. So yes, by all means, go into it now. You cannot overmarket right now, and you can't not be miss the boat by being innovative now and spending money on it and being aggressive. There are all sorts of studies out there of companies that were launched, for-profit companies and probably nonprofits, that were actually launched or made significant investments, Microsoft being one, during incredible downturns, incredible recession types of periods where now they're huge companies, but they stepped into it and they did things during a time of uncertainty. So I think you have to. As far as hiring a firm or hiring a person, that I can't, without knowing more detail, I don't know the answer to that. But I would say over the long term, your investment is what's important. As Kelly talked about, it's a rising tide raises all ships. You may not be able to tie that ROI, so go into it with your eyes open, but it's about the piece of the puzzle that I mentioned. This is the piece of the puzzle that you can't mention. If you were a Fortune 500 company or a 100 company and you weren't doing some kind of print advertising, now things have changed, okay? But back in my era in New York, if you were a Fortune 100 company not doing print advertising, it's like, what's wrong with you? Same thing now, like you're a company, you're an organization. Why aren't you like stepping into social media? You need to be. This is the time, this is the era to be doing it.
I would note.
Oh, go ahead.
Also, I just note, Austin, a couple weeks ago, I think the first webinar, we had Jeff Trimbath on, who was at the Heritage Foundation during 2008, 2009, and he discussed how they actually increased investments in development and marketing to get through the crisis then, and they actually ended up growing. They actually brought up on hundreds of thousands of new donors and followers because they invested more, and they came out stronger than their peers from that crisis. So, and you again, like you just said, Coca-Cola and all these companies actually invest more in marketing and advertising typically during these times than less. So
I have a quick tactical comment. I know we're trying to move quickly, but just to kind of build on that, I think Eric's right. Like, this is a time to not miss. And so if you're excited about that, but you're thinking to yourself, I really don't know how to do this, I don't know where to start. I'll be honest, there are some for-profit organizations that we work with that find themselves in the same space, and they know that they can't afford to have someone that they pay for social media in an ongoing way, but you might be able to think about a 3-month engagement with someone who can help you kind of figure out how you want to focus your channels. Maybe they can help you plan through an editorial calendar for your first 2 to 3 months. They maybe even can help you think through kind of templatizing the overall framework for how you might manage individual posts. They might be able to give you a couple of creative assets that you can start as launch points. I would be really honest with the partner that you engage that this is your plan. Don't act like you're going to get married forever and then just dump them at the end of the 3 months. But I think it's a way that you could think about, how can I jump into this and take advantage of this opportunity and then bring it back in-house?
Great idea.
That's great. Similarly to sort of like getting started with different channels, could anybody recommend some different tools or platforms for connecting multiple social media sites in one place? So we have questions both about back-end email tools like MailChimp versus Constant Contact, as well as social media tools like Hootsuite. And so professional preferences, or just what do you like to use?
Yeah, I'll jump in on Kelly's probably got everything. So, you know, I mean, Hootsuite is, I forget if I'm paying for mine now or not. I don't even remember. It was free for a while. It may not be now, or there's different upgrades. So Hootsuite, Sprout Social, there's a couple that are relatively inexpensive that you can deploy across Instagram, Facebook, or it's a little bit a little bit of a nuance with the Instagram and Facebook, but Twitter and Instagram and so forth, Twitter and LinkedIn, very easy to schedule them out. You sit there and spend your hour in the day, schedule out, get your calendar out. You can build your calendar in Hootsuite, build your calendar, plan it out for 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from now. I'm going to do one at 1 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, 6 in the afternoon. And these are the tweets. This is what I'm going to post. And just monitor it and deploy them. Like you spend an hour a day or something like that, just working on that. And then read your results and so forth and make sure it's working and see, you know, try different things. So yeah, I would just try a Hootsuite or something like that. There's other professional platforms, Radius and even HubSpot and things like that, but you don't need to do that right now. Just do a Hootsuite for sure. Was that the main part of the question? Like which platform? Like, oh, and the MailChimp or whatever. Yeah, so, MailChimp, Constant Contact, Campaign Monitor, there's multiple platforms out there for email, all fairly good, all have pluses and minuses, and you can't go wrong with any of those three. And then if you have a Salesforce or a Blackbaud or Razor's Edge Blackbaud product or something like that, you can usually integrate those so that your results are coming in. But if not, you can go into those platforms, you can read your results, you can see who's opening your emails, who's not opening them, and those kind of things. So those MailChimp has changed their pricing around a little bit lately too. So you just research that. They're all fairly reasonable and all based on, how many emails you have in the program. Kelly.
Yeah, there's a couple, you mentioned a number on the social media side that I'll mention. There's another one that's called CoSchedule that we actually use. I'm not exactly sure what their pricing tiers are, but it can help you kind of plan that editorial calendar and do the posting and do some monitoring. It kind of depends. The one thing I'll say, again, knowing that nonprofits are always thinking about resources and is this an investment that makes sense? Think about the time trade-off. So as Eric mentioned, with a lot of these platforms, you can also schedule your posts way ahead of time. So that piece of social media that feels so overwhelming that you have to do it daily. Well, think if you could plan your editorial calendar, write all of your posts 1 to 2 times a month, get them all into that platform. And then it's a little set it and forget it. You can't completely forget it. You need to monitor comments and engage. But so think about that time trade-off. And if it, allowed you to not have to, use 10 hours of someone's time or something, what could they be doing instead that might be bringing in more revenue?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there as far as planning it out. Have everything. It's a cut and paste job at that point. If you build it out ahead of time, you got your hashtags all thought out, you've got everything good to go, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna do Hootsuite. I'm gonna schedule these on, like, let's say the survey image, and I'm gonna do a survey, and I want to do Twitter. I want to do 10 tweets to, the next 2 days or whatever at these times. Okay, cut and paste there. Now I'm going to do a Instagram. I want to do the same thing. I got my little phrasing and messaging a little bit different. Post it there. LinkedIn, I'm going to post here twice a day, maybe, or once a day. But it's just it becomes a cut and paste job, and it becomes integrated. Back where we were talking about it, becomes the same message. All of a sudden, it's said, and it's going out while you sleep and while you're awake or whatever. Plug and play. So good. Yeah, I love that stuff.
Do you have any other tips or recommendations for paid advertising on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Instagram? Maybe how much it costs, how much to invest, how to get started in that?
Kelly might be better, but again, I'm always free to.
Well, you may have more of the nitty gritty on the nonprofit side, so maybe you should start. And
pricing, pricing I may not know right off the hand, but the thing. So some of that's relatively easy if you have to set up your Facebook account as an example, as a whatever type of account you got to set it up as, so that you can go into the ad manager and go in and pick your audiences. Kind of do, if you can load up within ad manager, load up some of your constituents. And they could do a lookalike in there if you'd like. That gets a little complicated, but you can pick your audience and then you pick your budget. So I've worked with organizations that say, hey, we're going to spend $50 over the next week to try to boost this or try to promote this, and do that. Just set your budget. Try to just play with it. Like, I would encourage you, like, I think any organization, no matter what situation, you can probably come up with, if you're doing yourself internally and you didn't pay a huge fee to an outside agency or something like that to manage this for you on a retainer for the month or something, you can, potentially do it yourself. Go in there and put $100 into the budget and try it out and pace it. And it's the same thing with Google AdWords and all that. Pace it out. Say, oh, I want to spend $25 a day on, my nonprofit. It's the best nonprofit in the world phrase. And I'll pay $25 every, a day and see how that works and tweak it. It's about iteration and experience or experimenting and seeing what works, but you do not have to spend a lot of money up front to do that. Now, if it works and you do start to see an ROI and you start to meet your metrics, like, hey, I want to get 100 new followers on Facebook, I'm willing to spend $100. And you spend $100 and you get 100 new followers, say, wow, I met that, let's spend another 100. Hey, let's spend 200. Let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. Is that good, Kelly, or do you want to add 2 cents?
No, I think that's good.
Good. Do you think should the same content be posted across multiple channels? So an article sent in Constant Contact and then on Facebook and then on the website, or what exactly does integration look like?
Yeah. So do you want me to go first, Kelly? I'm sorry.
Sure. Either one.
Go ahead. You go first, Kelly.
Well, so what I would say is yes and no. I think there's a piece of being consistent and coordinated, but not sounding like a robot. So I do think that there's a little bit of a different tone and tack that you want to take on Facebook versus Twitter versus your email. So maybe, you know, during this week or during this month or whatever, you're focusing people on wanting to engage, but maybe the image that you share is going to be a little bit different. Your lead in or your hook is going to be a little bit different. So you're kind of funneling people all towards one thing. And it's, you know, it's kind of connected. And so it makes sense, but it's not literally a copy and paste job, because then it does start to seem like a robot's doing it.
Yeah, totally agree. Just make sure the messaging is nuanced based on the platform. Facebook could be, say, for instance, a longer form. You could have a little longer, it could be different. You're going on Twitter, you know, you're constrained to the 140 or whatever they're up to now characters, right? To whatever it is. And then Instagram a little different. So, and even with your messaging in there, you may have to get straighter to the point on Twitter, like buy now or whatever it is, right? Versus, you know, something more subtle on Instagram. So you got that issue. The other issue I just want to point out real quickly, and I know we're running out of time, there's so many stuff to talk about here, is think about pillar content that you're building off of, like a base of content, whatever that means. Let's say you did this webinar, right? And then after this webinar, we're going to break it into 6 short videos. And then we're going to even break it down into smaller videos and show it on Instagram, 59-second clips of the answering one question on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm going to show 2 10-minute clips. And then on Twitter, I'm going to link right out to the whole webinar, right? So they can watch the whole thing, that kind of thing. And then guess what? I'm going to transcribe it, and I'm going to do another blog post about it with then I'm going to convert it into a PDF with all the questions and answers that we have, and create a PDF that's downloadable and push that out there. So think about pillar content and then breaking it down on the different platforms.
Let's see how much rapid fire we can do here. I think this one might be good for you, Kelly. Do you know anything about changing algorithms on Facebook now in the midst of COVID-19? A few people have suggested the ads are acting weird now.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that. To be honest, I don't have the exact code to what has changed. So I'm sorry I can't get into more detail, but I would encourage people to, you know, if you've kind of been doing one standard thing, really be thinking about video. I have a sense that some of the algorithm is leaning a little bit more towards video in a certain sense. So even if that's just a talking head video of yourself, you know, talking about what you want to do, you might give that a little bit of a try, but I'm not exactly sure what's driving that.
Awesome. Here's the next one. Eric, this might be good for you, maybe Justin. What do you think about creating a Facebook group for a monthly giving program?
Justin, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got time and everything to do that, wonderful. And I think it's worth incorporating into your development plan in general. It's just a question about where it fits in your general development plan for the year or the next couple of years, and how much do you need to increase by to support your programs, and where are those funds going to come from? You might have a massive online presence that will work. If you don't, you might have more success to meet your goals, at least going to grant making foundations and major donors. So you just got to evaluate it, back it up against your development plan. So inherently, no, it's not bad. It's just, where does it fit into your development plan is really the question. I don't know if you have anything else on that.
No, I think, yeah, I would say see where it fits. I think it's a good idea, and see where it fits. The other thing I would encourage people to do before they even do that is take a temperature on Facebook. If you have a active Facebook page where you're doing stuff, see what's going on. I might participate. I know I mentioned equine advocates in my opening remarks. I know there's another sanctuary on the call right now. They texted, and you know, like if I was one of those organizations, I'd be going into groups that are talking about sanctuaries, talking about saving animals, and things like that, and seeing what's going on and learn what's going on. And then maybe there would be a natural outgrowth, just kind of an organic outgrowth of people that would have an affinity to your organization. They could start their club on their own rather than me as the organization starting it. Maybe I could get an advocate to start it, and it would become viral and become, not viral, but become, that's not the right word to use nowadays, right? To become somewhat of an organic type of initiative would be wonderful.
Great. Last question. I'm going to you, Kelly. What's the best time of day to post on social media for maximum engagement?
All the times, all of the times. Every time of morning, noon, and night is all the times. No, I know that sounds flippant, but here's the thing that I would say. There's no magic thing. You can look up blogs and it'll say 3 o'clock on Tuesdays. And here's the thing. The fact of the matter is, even though this sounds like waffling, it depends a little bit on your audience. But the fact of the matter is about showing up. I actually find value in varying your times, thinking about morning, thinking about night, thinking about weekdays, thinking about weekends. And the fact of the matter is, kind of like email, you might only get a 10 or 15% open rate or something like that. And there's 85% of the people that didn't open that email. The same thing could be said for your posts. There's going to be, even every post that you see, some people are just going to never see that in their feed because that's not the time of day that they're engaging. So I actually recommend for a lot of channels, it might make sense to post multiple times a day. Could be similar threads, but change up the image so it looks a little bit different, change up the copy so it looks a little bit different, and you're going to hit people at different times. But if there was one answer to that, my guess is, Austin, when did you check your social media last? Eric, when did you? Justin, when did you? We all 4 did differently. We might be likely to be donors to a similar organization. So there's just not a perfect answer.
A lot of questions, but we've recorded them all. So we'll be in touch to follow up. We'll send a follow-up email with more information in there. And you can email me at austin@americanphilanthropic.com. You can email Eric at americanphilanthropic.com. And you can email Justin at americanphilanthropic.com. And Nicole can drop those email addresses in the chat box. We're happy to keep dealing with your questions. We also have, go ahead, Eric.
Well, no, I was going to say, if we could do a session if people wanted to email, figure out how to do it, but just answer questions. We won't have even talk at the beginning. We'll just go into, because I think there's a lot of pent up interest here and some stuff on a tactical end of how to execute and throw out ideas and help people work through it. So if we wanted to do a roundtable
I think that,
or something like that, just answer questions. It won't even open up with remarks.
I think that's right. And we'll have the questions in the background. We do have this week's roundtable with Eric and other American Philanthropic staff and direct response. That's Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern. Again, send me an email and I can send you the invitation. That's an open conversation about direct response.
That's open. Actually, we could just use that one because that's been direct response roundtable. If you have questions on anything digital related, more than happy to address it. Maybe I can twist Kelly's arm to join me on that next week. But if not, I'll make it up. I'll make it up if she's not there. Make up the answers.
Good.
Yeah, so we'll make sure we have those resources. As far as this series goes, the last 2 things we have, next week is our last webinar. It's on development personnel. We will have Andrew McIndoe, the Vice President of Development from Heritage Foundation, as well as our colleague at American Philanthropic, Nicole Riscala. She's been messaging you in the background, moderating the questions. So she'll be coming out from behind the camera next time to help us think through development department management during crisis and shifting to today's needs. We also have our next industry-specific webinar next Friday, May 1st. That's at 2 o'clock. It's on Catholic parish fundraising. Obviously, Catholic churches are facing a lot of struggles these days with the loss of weekly offertory revenue. So if you're interested in that, you can find information at American Philanthropic's website on the events tab. And then the last thing, and then I'll go back to Eric. Once this webinar ends, you'll receive info about a survey so you can tell us what you liked and how it went for you. You'll also receive a link in an email tomorrow. We'd love if you could fill that out. And that'll also have more notes from based on today. Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was just going to say, I know some of those questions, like there's some really good questions that we kind of didn't get to. So some that are going to take a little while to talk through. And if those individuals, I know Nicole's going to give out the email address or where we'll get that from, but yeah, feel free. I mean, however we want to do that. I want to get those questions answered and help people. So however we make that happen, even if it's not the roundtable, if it's a personal quick phone call or whatever, I'm more than happy to do that.
No, please, if you have questions unanswered, whether you sent them in or not, send us an email. We'll make sure that we can get to it. And you're more than welcome to join us on the roundtable next week. We can deal with it then. We'll set up a new one if we need. Go ahead, Justin.
I was going to say, yeah, the follow-up email will also invite attendees to set up a free 30 to 60 minute call with us if you'd like to chat through any of this. So the roundtable or 30 to 60 minute with one of us. We've got plenty of options if we didn't get to your questions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone again for being with us. Thank you, Eric. Everyone knows Eric is eager to get to your questions, so thanks for sending those in. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. We will hopefully see everyone next week, and do be in touch. Thanks.